I left Aitchison 55 years ago, and I graduated from Aitchison 43 years ago. So coming back is pretty emotional. It's a sense of deja vu, but I love it, and thank you to TEDx for having me over. You see, before I start, I want to share some stories of giving and sharing that I've had over the 60 years of my life. But let me start off at Aitchison by saying that I was a very average student, you see. I wasn't given any, I never won any trophies at the Founders' Day, never got one of these colorful college blazers either. So I was an average student. But what I got from Aitchison was a set of values, which I'll share with you later. And I made some wonderful friends, you see. If you see, this is ourselves and my friends in the year 1980. And these friends are still there, you see. So that's the beauty of friendship that you make at Aitchison, and I treasure that. And I think that's been something Aitchison has given me, and thank you, Aitchison, for this wonderful friends that I have. They're all with me today and a source of strength for me. So let me just start off. After Aitchison, you see, I stumbled into a number of things, but ended up becoming a lawyer, established a law firm, and everything was fine, professionally reasonably successful, things were doing well. And then, at the very beginning of my law career, a friend who just set up a law college, a local law college, asked me to come and teach. Not everybody teaches law. I mean, a lot of successful lawyers don't have time, and rightly so, because they're busy. The law firm brings you a lot of money, a lot of fame and all that, and you don't need to really come out and teach. Somehow I volunteered, and I went in to teach at a local college. And that's the first milestone towards giving and sharing that I, want to share with you. I taught for good 20 years till I was picked up by the bench. So on those 20 years, I moved on to teach at LUMS also. One day, Dr. Parvez Hassan called me and he said, you have these innovative ideas of teaching. I didn't know Dr. Parvez Hassan then. And he said that, well, why don't you teach business law at LUMS? I said, okay, because LUMS being a business school, they just had a small component of business law. I went in to teach, and I found it so exciting. Students are far more serious than the other law colleges, and it was very exciting. And it picked up so well that from 5, the class grew into 10 sessions, into 30 sessions. And I still remember that Sayyid Babar Ali and Dr. Parvez one day, we were talking, and they said, how about setting up a law school, you see? And that led to the establishment of the law school. And these are my teaching years, as you see. And we end up with a law school. So that's how giving and sharing resulted in, you see. I could have gone on and practiced, and I was making money, and everything is fine. I have a normal, commercial, simple, professional life. But I thought I need to take time out and come out and do something with the students, which I really enjoyed. And that's kind of then finally translated into a law school, which I think is one of the finest law schools in the country right now. So that's one thing that I want to share. But that interaction with the students, pulling them up, the experiences that I had, I carried that with me. And that stayed with me as I went onto the bench. And that transformed me in many ways. You see, whatever you learn, wherever you go, it stays with you and you carry it with you. So I took all that with me to the bench, and I'll talk about that in a minute. The next milestone comes, and that is about public interest litigation. Normally, lawyers would go ahead, work. I mean, ours was a corporate law litigation firm. I could have continued, as I said, which itself is giving back to the society if you're a good professional lawyer. But then teaching perhaps led to public interest litigation. And I still remember the first case we took up was a Dungi ground case. People from Lahore would know that there is a Dungi ground in Lahore next to the famous restaurant Zook. I don't know if it's still there or not. And the government of the day wanted to convert that Dungi ground into a commercial enterprise. They wanted to put up an IMAX cinema there and probably build a plaza or something. The ground itself catered to the low-income society around that area who would come play cricket or football there, the children in that area. And they wanted to convert that. So Ardashir Kawasji calls me up and he says, I want to go into a petition to the court, into the High Court, and stop this. This can't happen. So we take that matter up, and we go to the court, and we fight that case. There were a number of things that happened during that process, but we fought that case. And today, if you were to go past Alam Road, the Dungi ground is still there. It's still a ground, and there's no IMAX cinema. So I thought that is one contribution that the public interest litigation made. And Ardashir Kavasri is right there, who was itself quite a valiant warrior as far as this is concerned. The next issue was my students in the class, alums, decided to take up a petition against vehicular air pollution to the High Court. We're talking about early 90s. So we take this petition to the court. The environmental movement had not yet started, by the way. Shaila Zia comes in 94. We're talking about early 90s. We go there, and I still remember the first day, and the judge thought this is some fancy litigation that I've brought. They said, we'll take this case up later on. Let me attend to bail matters and criminal matters and other matters. We'll deal with this later. And it took us about 10 years to succeed in this case when people understood what it was all about. And this led to the introduction of the CNG rickshaw. The twin-engine rickshaw was banned. Some of the interventions were made regarding the fuel quality also. We might be stuck with smog today, but at that time, the change of the twin-engine rickshaw into a CNG rickshaw made a huge difference. The other thing that happened at that time was black plastic bags, which were all over the place, and we discovered that this was carcinogenic, and people should get rid of this. This is not healthy at all. In fact, dangerous to health. So we took up another public interest petition. Now all this is happening, we're allocating time while the law firm goes on, you see, and we're giving time to this because we thought this is making a difference. It is changing the lives of people. Nobody is coming to court. Why can't we go to court ourselves and do something? So this black plastic bags were banned in Punjab at that time. There are other plastic bags now, but the black plastic bags are out now. Then came the issue, where is the landfill in Lahore? I mean, these are basic issues. Where do we throw our garbage, you see? And then we talk about early 90s again. Where do we throw our garbage? And we discovered that there was a place called Mahmood Booty, which is now on the Ring Road. And that's where they used to dump the way, as you see, this is how they were dumping the garbage of the city there. Whereas the concept of a landfill, which is a proper structure, which gets covered, you can even generate methane out of it, and you can build a park on top of it, yet you bury all that under it. So that litigation led to the development of the first landfill in Lahore. So public interest litigation went on. There was a case where they had set up cement plants in a valley called Kalar Kahar. All over the world, you can't set up a cement plant in a valley, you see, because of the inverted air, it becomes really hot and it's not livable for the people in the valley. And 12 villages are surrounding these cement plants at that time. So we're talking about mid-90s when you took up this case, and the court did not interfere at that time. They said, no, we will not interfere because we need cement in the country. But it ravaged and totally destroyed that area. However, we were successful in introducing the fact that there is a concept of environmental impact assessment. This case led to that. People understood that there is a concept of EIA, and that was introduced. People got really aware. The environmental department was put on the mat, and they understood that they had to do something in the future. We did not succeed at that time, but I think there was a lot of awareness that took place at that time because of the litigation. Then came the lawyers' movement in 2007. Now, this was again a very disruptive movement that had come for lawyers like ourselves. We had a very functional law firm, a corporate law firm working. We were making money, everything was fine, but now came the critical point to take a decision. Do we stand by what has happened, and do we stand by the lawyers and the concept of rule of law, the supremacy of the Constitution? Or what do we do? Do we go back, sit, and go keep working? So that's the major decision that took place, and we opted to go for the Constitution, go for the rule of law, and we said we'll not appear before these judges for 2 years because they had not been constitutionally appointed. Now that was, again, a disruptive movement in life which sort of made quite a change within, you see. So we sat outside, we never went to court for 2 years, and we were out on the streets, getting incarcerated, getting lathi charged. But we thought, if we have to take a position in life, we have to stand for it. And we stood for the rule of law, we stood for the Constitution, and that's the decision that comes in one's life, you see, at times. When you have to take a position, you have to stand for it. And we stood for it, letting go of our practice for those years that went in the judicial and in the lawyers' movement. And then after the lawyers' movement, one day the Chief Justice of Pakistan calls me up and says, we would like to elevate you to the bench. Another major change for me, that I had a thing going and I was happy with my life. I enjoyed the freedom that I had. There were limitations to this kind of service, and I was asked to come. I wasn't sure, I was reluctant, I accepted. I thought I'll go in for a year and then come out, because now it's getting embarrassing. Everybody is calling and saying you need to come up to the bench. So I go up to the bench in 2009, and it changes my life. And that's what I wanted to share with you, talking about community, talking about impact, talking about giving, talking about sharing. It's not about personal success. It never was. Starting from the teaching days, starting from the public interest litigation, somehow the focus shifted from me to public, because it was giving me such huge satisfaction. There was a huge high that I was enjoying at that time. I go into the court and I had noticed that as a lawyer, I would probably do 3 to 4 cases a week. I was handling 30 cases a day. I said, look at the impact. I mean, you are deciding 30 cases a day compared to what we were doing earlier. And those cases had diverse laws involved. You see, you're talking about a rent matter, land acquisition matter, criminal matter, all sorts of issues, and you realized the problems people are facing. For the first time, you connect to people, because in a fancy law firm sitting elsewhere, only a corporate client walks in. You're not really in touch with people. Public interest litigation helped that too, because you went out to the community. I still remember when you filed the Color Kahar cement cases, we went to the site, we understood the science behind all this, we met the people, understood their problems. That interaction was inquisitorial. It wasn't adversarial, where you sit in your office and get your documents and file a case. So that kind of interaction stayed with me till I got to the High Court. And then, looking at those files, looking at those issues people were raising, it was absolutely amazing to go ahead and see their faces when people would walk out of the court where their disputes would be resolved. Was huge satisfaction. And I thought that I need to stay back. I mean, this is the real thing. I don't need to go back and make money. This is it. This is so gratifying, that the kind of resolutions you're doing for people. And then that sort of moves on, and you start developing jurisprudence. And it's a high that whatever you write becomes the law. You could interpret the Constitution, and that becomes the law. And so while sitting there, the first case comes up to me about a disability law. I mean, it's an exciting case where a person sits through the CSS examination, gets 12th position in the country, and he's visually impaired. He gets 12th position in the country. He opts for foreign office. He's refused to sit and take up that position in the foreign office because he's visually impaired. And there is a regulation that the Foreign Office has that they cannot take visually impaired people into service. That was challenged. We struck it down, being unconstitutional, and we made the officer go sit in the Foreign Office, use all the assistive technology available to people with disabilities. And several years ago, after that case, young officer came to see me at the Supreme Court. He's one of the leading Foreign Office officers there, and he has no problem. And I must tell you that he sent me a message on WhatsApp while this is my Supreme Court chamber, and I received a message on WhatsApp and saying, I am the visually impaired, and he came over and saw me. And I was so happy that he is working for the civil service, for the Foreign Office. This also led to, I became the Chief Justice and I started reforms in the area. We thought it was important that an ordinary litigant gets to have his case decided at the earliest. You see, we, for the first time, introduced technology, brought in computerization, changed the way high courts were working, introduced gender-based violence courts. I'll have to go through it a bit fast now. Gender-based courts were introduced for the first time because the victims of gender-based violence were not coming to court. They were too embarrassed to come to the court because the courts are full of people and the lawyers were asking all sorts of wrong questions. We changed that, one trial at a time. Victim doesn't come into the courtroom, could sit in the next room, could be examined through a camera, and the questions posed to that person would be vetted by the judge first, so she's not embarrassed. With the GBV courts installed, the conviction rate went up. Similarly, child courts were introduced, bringing in children into court separately, dealing with them separately, so that in their formative years, they're not affected by litigation and not affected by it. So we went on, we introduced ADR in Pakistan, and I went on to the Supreme Court. There's a lot to be done in the Supreme Court, but what I want to say at the end of the day, that you see out of maybe 103 million children in this country, Aitchison has 3,000 students. So you're one of those 3,000 people out of 103 million people. So if much is given to you, much is expected of you. And I think we need to go out and do something. It is perhaps our responsibility to reach out and help and make a difference in the society. So I'll end by saying that perhaps Aitchison, somewhere on the sports field or in the class, I want to thank my teachers who must have imbibed some of these values of fair play, justice, and equity that carried with me all these years that led to all that we're doing. And I leave you with this quote, and thank you, Aitchison, for having me over. Thank you.